like we can go ahead and call to order. Do you want to do a roll call, please?
Bentley?
Here.
Motts?
Here.
Carcinogen?
Here.
Hayland?
Here.
Josh and Ashley have
Thank
not
you.
joined yet.
Thanks, Jenny. Could I get a motion to approve the minutes from September?
So moved.
I'll
Thanks.
second.
So second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Thank you. Are there any audience items tonight?
No one has contacted me, no.
Okay. Next on the agenda is to consider the recommendation to council to approve the Polk City Community Foundation gift. Is that you, Jason? Are you?
Yep, I will take that one. So this is in regards to the tree on the northwest corner of the square. The Polk City Community Foundation, they had several donors approach them, so they kind of made an impromptu campaign that money has went into, and they would like to pay for the project of a tree carving and gift it to the city. I'm sure most of you saw, and I've spoken with most of you on this. I put something out on Facebook too, just to get the community's creative juices flowing. And after all of the ideas that I saw, I kind of took the frequency. I've got a recommendation for a carving here this evening, but I want to preface also that this structure will be on the square about 10 to 15 years before the root system of that stump ultimately fails and we'll have to remove it. So I wanted a design that would be useful after its life on the square has expired. So I want something that will make sense in another park or trail side, so we'll be able to set it in cement as a permanent structure in 10 to 15 years. With that being said, I hope you guys would consider recommending to council one face of the tree will say Polk City vertically. I think that is kind of, even though Polk City obviously goes to the north of the square, a lot of people think that's the impromptu welcome to Polk City once you hit that square and you see the gazebo. So I would like the northwest facing to say Polk City. I think down the road, when we have a new trail coming into town, I see that being the perfect welcome off on the side as bikers or pedestrians kind of walk into town. And on the back side facing town square, we would like to do an ode to the 4 seasons. So we will have something to the flower, the sun, the snowflake, the leaf. Yeah, I think that is obviously we're the city of all seasons. We have the 4 Seasons Festival. It's kind of our claim to fame. So depending on when the artist gets here, and I've learned more about tree carvings in the last month than I ever thought I would. You know, once you get to the tree, it tells you a lot about the canvas that you've got to carve. You can come in with plan A, but if there are, just depending on the build of the tree and if there's knots here, they might have to change the design a little bit just to fit the existing curvature of the tree. So our hope is that the remaining 3 sides will kind of have a ringed design with a ring of spring, a ring of summer, a ring of fall. So it'll be very much of a totem pole-esque look when you're looking from the square towards the pole.
Cool.
Yes, if you decide this is a direction we want to go, we are in the artist's queue. His name, it's Jeff something from Storm Lake. Let me look it up. But he has us in his queue to start late October, early November. So we should have this project done hopefully by the first snowfall.
Wow.
Yes. his last name is Klatt, Jeff Klatt of Storm Lake.
That's quick.
I was a little surprised. I thought his business might rev up with everybody having a stump that they want to do something with. Are there any further questions about the project? I'd be happy to answer any.
So Jason, I do have a question, and it really kind of goes to branding. You mentioned the leaf and the snowflake, which I've seen on the building across the way, but the signs are the skier, the golfer, the boater. Were there any comments about having too many brands?
You know, I think we're at the point where we do have our city's logo of, you said, the bike, the golfer. One, the intrinsic detail of that wasn't really conducive to this project after speaking with Jeff. And I think we're at the point where the Four Seasons is almost like our throwback. People seem to associate them very closely together. And yeah, I see both as kind of our calling cards. So in discussions I had specifically with folks, there was more traction on the Four Seasons versus the existing city logo. Maybe because the city logo, it's very granular to a recreation level, you know, whereas the All Seasons is, you know, everybody has their season of choice, their activity of choice each season. So I thought that spoke to a broader audience.
Well, that's good information, really. And what would the cost be for this?
I'm not exactly sure of how much the Community Foundation has raised for this. I know it would at least cover the artist's bill of about $2,500. So it's
That's
my
really
understanding that
cheap.
and it's my understanding that any excess would go towards the maintenance of this from year to year. There's things you have to do to the carving, you know, sealant, just to keep it against, you know, those harsh Iowa winters without the bark to protect it. It's going to take something artificial to protect it, make it last those 10 to 15 years.
I don't mean to monopolize the questions, but does he do a design before he shows up, or does he just show up with his tool in hand and go at it?
That's another thing I learned. A lot of chainsaw artists, you give them a chainsaw and a piece of wood and they can create magic, but if you put a pen and paper in front of them, there's a reason they're not doing comics for the Sunday Register. So many of them, they'll talk with myself when they get there. I'll show them, and I've obviously shown him designs along the way. You know, it's kind of that blank canvas, and like I said, if he gets here wanting to go one direction and we have to change it based on what the tree's telling us, you know, I think they like the ease of being able to take a tangent if they need to, but obviously within the same idea of the carving. So yeah, another thing I learned, they like to chainsaw wood, but they don't like to draw.
So it's no longer that one man that's donating the money. It's a different group now. Is that what you said?
No, so the individuals that wanted to donate to this project donated their money to the Polk City Community Foundation. So there was an easy way to pool all donations, and then they will in turn pay the bills and gift the structure to us.
Cool. Yeah, that's really fast and cheap. I'm kind of nervous now, like, what's it gonna look like? But I'm excited too.
If you take a look at his website, he's very talented.
Yeah, I
no
did
doubt
look
it's gonna
at
be a
it. He's
beautiful
good,
piece.
yeah. I know.
So to be clear, now we're voting on recommending to council that we approve acquisition of that gift of funds from the Community Foundation.
Yes, that is correct.
All right. Could I get a motion to approve the acquisition of funds from the Polk City Community Foundation for the tree carving on the square?
I motion to approve.
A second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Sorry, I think I was too fast. Is anyone opposed? Okay. All right. So that motion passes. Thanks for all your work on that, Jason, and for reaching out to everybody to talk it through. So next on the agenda is to discuss the 92820 council land acquisition.
Yep, this one's me. So this is just awfully exciting to be able to talk about. And if any of you folks looked at the minutes from that 928 council meeting, you already know. But City Council approved the purchase of 57 acres on the north side of town to be developed into a regional park-esque thing, kind of a regional recreation destination that could have sport complex, amenities, other things like dog parks, splash pads. I mean, we're going to be able to get really creative with this, and it's really exciting. And I am going to attempt to share my screen and show you where the land is. All right. Was I successful?
Nothing there yet. There it is.
There we go. Yep.
All right, perfect. Well, on the bottom here, you can see East North Side Drive. So if we go out of town to the north on North 3rd, if we'll turn at East Vista Lake by the technology campus, you can kind of see where it dead ends right now in that bean field. And here in the red, you can see what the school has purchased for their second elementary school in town. And the green would be our 57 acres that sit just east of that. So this is very exciting. I think this will nearly, I say confidently, this will more than double our park space. I believe right now we don't even have 57 total. So this is much needed, and it's going to have, its reach of recreation amenities is going to be it's going to be very far reaching. We're going to have a lot of different user groups at a facility of this size. So it's very exciting. To kind of briefly touch on the timeline, the first step will be developing a park-specific master plan for this. So I have sent out an RFP, a request for proposal for a regional park master plan. I am hoping to get submissions back. The due date is November 2nd. And we will conduct interviews with those firms on November 16th. That will be a 6-person panel consisting of elected officials, commission members, and staff. Then I will primarily be the point of contact with this firm going forward. I'll identify groups that I would like the firm to interview with their input on what they'd like to see at this facility. One of those groups will be this Parks Commission. It'll either be at a scheduled meeting, or we may have to do a special brainstorming session, and we would obviously do that the right way and making it open to the public since we are a public commission. But yeah, so that's kind of what we're looking at for at least the remainder of 2020 and early 2021. Again, this is very exciting. Are there any questions on this?
Really cool.
So how does this play into the master parks or city plan that we looked at last month?
Sure. So in the CIP, this was identified as a year 2 or year 3. As such, I believe it was called Regional Park in there. So this was one of our projects in our 5-year CIP.
Cool.
So what does the funding plan look like to fund things that might be in the master plan? So step one's the master plan. What's the next steps, I think, is my question, or how that might look.
Sure. So after the master plan, we would go into the design aspect. And then in the design, that is when the firm kind of acts as I'm trying to think. They would reach out to contractors. They would get things set up for actually building with the specs that they've got. As for funding for a project like this, Chelsea, would you like to speak to that at all if you're on?
Sure. I think for funding, we have an estimated dollar amount, but it could definitely change, and we might have to outfit the park in multiple phases since it is such a big facility. But we would obviously go after as many grants and private donations as possible. I immediately think of Vision Iowa. I think that very simply, if we went through their process and we had enough matching requests for that, we could get $500,000 from Vision Iowa. And then we would look into also borrowing for general obligation debt. I don't know what that process looks like at this time, but it could involve a bond referendum. It could not involve one as well. That will be up to the decision made by the city council. But our plan is to get some grant funding, maybe kick off a small private donation campaign, and then borrow for the remaining amount.
I know this wasn't what was asked, but I do think it's important to note that the purchase, which was $800,000, was made through our savings and reserve. So I think that's an important thing to point out here. That no debt incurred in the acquisition of the land. The development, as Chelsea said, could be a different ballgame, but just want to point that out.
So Rob, or Chelsea, I guess, does this property, which looks like it includes a huge amount of housing, does that border on the Hale property? Are these the Knapp properties that go all the way to the Hale property? Or is?
Yes. So Steve, yes, it would be a border, but their facility is still it's not butting up to the residential homes. But yes.
Thanks.
I'm gonna have to nab one of those lots.
Yeah, being close to a park and a school, they're bound to go fast.
Yeah.
You and 210 other families.
Yeah. I get first dibs. This is like right behind the recycling center, right? Kind of in that area.
Sure. So if you look on my screen, I believe I'm still sharing. Do you see my cursor down here where I'm circling?
Yeah.
So that would be our public works facility.
Okay.
Right now.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. So we're talking off to the northeast.
Cool. That's awesome. So, does this have a connection near the bike trail too? Is that part of the idea as well, or?
In the grand scheme, yes, we're hopeful that this would serve as a hub for regional bike trails as well, coming in and leaving town.
Great.
Yes, so very excited to acquire this land. It's going to really connect Polk City and offer a lot for its citizens.
Any other questions or comments on the land acquisition?
So as the Parks Board, how will we be involved with this in future months?
Sure. So the first thing would be during the master plan. I have identified and asked Amy as the chair to sit on that selection committee. So choosing your leadership, I have chosen her to give Parks Commission input in selecting the firm that will do the master plan. Once we've identified that firm, I will have representatives from that firm sit down with interested user groups. It's probably the soccer club, Little League, perhaps a focus group of certain aged kids. I'm not sure how in depth they'll go, but then also this commission. So we will have a commission brainstorming session with those master plan firm reps to get your input on this project.
Cool. Thanks.
Well,
I
thanks,
think
Jason,
this
and
is
thanks
very
for leaving.
exciting. Sorry, I was just saying it's very exciting.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. Yeah, thanks, Jason, for all of your hard work on getting everything going there. So next on the agenda is the discussion of the 3rd and Davis property sale, including the public hearing. So who's someone
This
leading?
one-
Jason, are you still on the, still taking it? Okay.
Yep, this one's me too.
right.
So yes, I'm just going to kind of give some facts as to what this process is looking like. It's certainly gained some traction and some publicity lately. So the Hy-Vee Corporation approached the city about the purchase of the 3rd and Davis property.
No.
They are offering $650,000 for the property, and per discussions at council, they would like to see that $650,000 be earmarked for future parks and recreation projects across the city. So to beautify existing parks, speed up some projects, things like that. I mean, you could look at the CIP and see some projects there that maybe get fast tracked. We could get creative, and we could identify new projects that weren't realistic before. But really, all I wanted to say there was that Hy-Vee approached the city, the price that was offered, and that a public hearing is at the 10/12 council meeting. And preceding that, from 3 to 5 on October 12th, Hy-Vee is doing a little informational session at the community center to talk about their side of the project. So anybody that's interested in having your voice heard, I would certainly encourage you to go to one or both of those opportunities. With that, yeah, if there's any points to be discussed, feel free.
I'm a little sad.
Can I?
I like
This
that.
isn't technically, since this isn't technically a park, do we have any feedback or say in that?
Certainly your voice as a commission is valuable, but you hit on it right there, Josh. This is not a designated park. This is undeveloped city-owned property. So it has not been earmarked for a park. It has not been earmarked for a city hall, a fire station, anything. So it's literally a 3-acre green canvas.
So I'll put on my other hat and chime in, my community visioning hat, and just remind everyone that the 3rd Street green space was one of the areas that the community visioning group identified for a parks project. And we're currently canvassing opinion from community visioning members on their feelings about the property being sold. And then also at the same time, if sold and the money goes to parks, what community visioning project the members would be most in favor of identifying for potential funding.
So I know, thanks Jason for the information here. I don't want to spend too much time. I'm trying to figure out the best way to shrink down. I have a lot that I want to say on this, and we have a council meeting next week to do that. But I do, hopefully, if it's okay, want to take a little bit of time here to expound on a few different things. So as Jason mentioned, there's a history right here with this land. I've been pretty outspokenly unhappy with how it's been handled up until about a year ago, where I kind of pushed to get a plan for this land. There had been previous development opportunities, but we listed it for sale about a year ago. I may be a little bit off on my timing, but didn't get any offers. We did get an offer last spring from a good developer. It was a good plan. At that juncture, we had, or at that point, we made the determination that the lift from a residential development wasn't worth the compromise on giving up space. And at that point had made the determination to kind of get, it's on Josh's question, to leave it alone, let community visioning, because that process was just getting started, but leave it off. The CIP, because we didn't know what was going to be, leave everything off in terms of what it could be, and just like Jason said, leave it as that blank canvas, and had operated. I had personally operated under the assumption that some way, somehow, it was going to be a park to some degree. I was excited to see what the landscape architects came back with as in the proposal in the board that they had shared, and then out of left field, and I want to be super clear about this piece, and I know I'm going to be redundant on what Jason said, but Hy-Vee approached the city, and I make that distinction because, well, one, it's been misrepresented, and two, I think that further explains the action that's taken place from that point a handful of weeks ago, wherever it was. The only determination collectively that we've made as a council, or in large part the city, is to listen to that offer. Anything, given the fact that it's the amount of money that it is, and the potential addition to the town, I think it would be irresponsible if we didn't take them up on at least listening to that offer. I haven't talked to many other council people. I know there were varying opinions given initially, but don't know what the store looks like, don't know how it impacts the neighbors, don't know how it impacts traffic. I'm skeptical on pieces of those that can be reconciled, but ever since we announced the public hearing, I've tried to, first literally, the 15 minutes after I got the packet, I called Steve. We talked for an hour about this, and I've tried to get this notion out there, because I think it's a debatable point, and I'm going to stand behind that, and I'll talk about some of the social media activity last week here in a second. But I do think that it's important to weigh those options. Do the benefits of what Hy-Vee can bring, potentially a pharmacy, prepared food, an option on Sunday that we don't have now, outweigh the genuine impacts to, first, the neighbors in that area? That's always been the primary concern, at least of me, and I think of others on the council. But what are they going to do to mitigate those? If they can't, then quite honestly, maybe this is pretty easy. But if they can, again, I think it would be premature to dismiss it out of hand. The traffic, I don't know about. I mean, I know that's been brought up, but again, just trying to, get feedback. So when, and I'm not going to try not to call anybody out on this, because there's a post, and I don't have a problem with the post. I wish it was a little bit more accurate from last week, but I do have a real big problem with some of the comments that were made and the nature of how it was discussed. When I saw the post, I was excited because, again, it was an opportunity to get feedback. But it quickly turned into a direction where if you weren't ready to pick up a pitchfork and a torch, you were shouted down pretty quickly. And I find that really really frustrating and really unfortunate, because I do want to get your feedback. I want to get others' feedback, and didn't feel like that opportunity was given to many folks. Again, I've been talking for about 5 minutes now, but I do want to use this, we're a week out from that meeting, to solicit more feedback. And if this is a hard no for you, you don't want to even hear what Hy-Vee has to say, that's fine. Like, let me know. I appreciate that feedback. Since Thursday, I've been called a joke and have ruined the town, and their kids don't want to move back. I don't know what to do with that, and it comes with the territory. That's fine. But I do, if you're willing to listen, great. If you're for it, great. Would like to get as much feedback as possible, because I do think this is something worth discussing. But I just want to close with reiterating that the property was not for sale. This was not something that we sought out. This is not something that we're pushing in any way, shape, or form. It's a response to an activity from an outside company who has, or presume has, some pretty specific plans on what they would like to do. So, yeah, sorry to monopolize too much time. I just, given everything that's happened, I wanted to take this opportunity to clarify
What
something.
time is the meeting again?
3 to 5
Like what day?
on Monday, and then the council meeting is 6 o'clock, like it usually is.
Okay, so that's next month. 3 to 5, or or is this next week?
Next week.
Next week, okay.
Yeah, Monday the 12th.
Monday. Okay.
Hey,
Can
Rob,
I ask? Yeah. Sorry.
I was just gonna, you go, Amy, you go.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. I just wanted to ask a point of clarification. Is this the only piece of property that's been in discussion with Hy-Vee so far? Like, there's not conversation about multiple different sites or secondary options for them. It's just been the conversation on this piece of property.
But from my perspective, yes, Chelsea, maybe be a better answer to, they approached the city for a purchase of this specific land. It wasn't a, hey, we want to come to town, where do you think we should go? The thing, I don't know, Chelsea, you're probably a better person to answer it, but.
Yeah, yes. This is their only location for a grocery store identified. So just to let you guys know, Hy-Vee still does own the lot across the street from Casey's, where they still do plan to build a fast and fresh convenience store. So right now they're proposing 2 locations, a grocery store and a convenience store.
Chelsea answered my question.
Yeah, I was wondering that too. I was like, is this going to be the gas station vision or the full blast? And I know we're saving this till, I know, in Rob, I totally get how you feel. I guess the pitchforks way is the only way people can communicate with each other now. But my main thought on it is and I'm trying to leave that I live right next to there out of it. But is that what we want people to see when they come into the town, and or would it be more attractive to see a park? But I totally get the need for the grocery store. So yeah, it's just a lot to think about as a neighbor to that.
Oh, and I think that it's important to hear from everybody. I think it's a little more important to hear from the neighbors, as I've heard both indirectly and directly from. And so, like I said, if I live there, I know even in this household, we've had discussions on it, and but I think when you wear the council hat, putting the property tax considerations on the need for commercial growth is the reason to listen. If there's enough people that are a hard no because there's nothing that that they can do to buffer what you have now, or to mitigate the traffic risks, or noise and those things like that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have those opinions, and that's what I want to genuinely hear. I just think from our, from a city standpoint, we wouldn't be doing our job if we weren't listening to a sizable offer for, a big development. And again, the benefits of those developments certainly come with other pieces. So appreciate your Ellie.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well,
So
It
two
might
quick
be
questions I've got. Real quick, two quick questions. Is the city providing any sort of tax breaks or incentives to them? And is the $650,000 sale price what you expected or listed it for when it went up for sale a year ago?
So a little bit of history on, I will answer your question, Josh, although I'm not going to start there. But when we didn't have any, the offer that we had for the residential was somewhere in the 100 range. We didn't list it with a specific offer or for a price. It was just made available for sale type of thing. I was also told by another developer that that you would basically have to give away the land to be able for a certain amount of development to pencil out. So I don't remember the exact figure of the offer in the spring, but it was in the mid 100s, I think. There was I used air quotes on another offer that was heavily incentivized and pretty low. Nothing even, I mean, I think we're 3 or 4 times the offer from Hy-Vee through negotiations finalizing at 650 is 3 or 4 times what the other offers were, and I don't think there is any. They haven't asked for anything now, and again, so that leads to another point that I probably should have made. So the public hearing is set for the sale. The sale, I'm assuming, were it to go ahead, and I'm not being predictive on it was. I'm just outlining the process. There would be at least 3 hearings for the rezoning, and the offer would be predicated on rezoning for them to go through. So multiple opportunities to go through this, but they've not asked for, at least that I'm aware of, any incentives at this point.
If there's no other initial questions, it might be useful for us to talk about, similar to community visioning has done, to say, council has proposed that the money go towards park improvements. The other option is, for the Parks Commission to advocate that that land be kept for a park itself. So maybe just from the lens of parks in Polk City, as the Parks Commission, we could just talk pros and cons a little bit, or if we have any opinions, maybe we're fine one way or the other, as long as there's improvements going to parks in the community. But maybe we could talk a little bit about just from what's best for the park system in Polk City, or if we have a thought on that or a recommendation.
I know from my perspective, I don't know if we want to go around the table or how you want to do that, Amy, but I'd love to hear, individual and then cumulatively, here's how it works. But, also here's the why too. Like I said, looking for as much of this feedback as we can get.
Before we do that, it might be helpful for me to understand, could someone share a little bit about what the $650,000 buy in a park, if that makes sense? Like, what kind of scale of improvement could we be talking about, or things might we be looking at in other parks or other parts of the city if this money is available?
Sure, Amy, I can kind of brush with a broad stroke on that one. If you were to look at a Marina Cove like playground for size with a better surfacing, we would be looking at an ADA compliant surfacing. It's kind of like what's on the square instead of the old wood chips. The surfacing and the playground feature, roughly, you're looking at $200,000. You know, I feel like something that some of our parks are missing. The one that jumps out to me, Leonard Park, would be some sort of shade structure or an open air shelter. I mean, there's not a tall tree there, and when it's 100 degrees, that is a hot park. Something like that, an open air shelter, you're looking at $40,000 to $45,000. You know, obviously other things would be, I'm going to just call it park beautification, you know, around the park signs, maybe some sort of landscaping. So it's not just 2 posts in the ground. We're looking at, you know, I don't know if it's wildflowers or native grasses, just something that kind of dolls it up a little bit. And I believe that was one of Community Visioning's things, wasn't it, Steve? Just kind of the beautification of signage and things like that.
Yeah, it wasn't, it was a lot of beautification. It wasn't just plantings around signs, but it was also developing a plan for making our benches consistent, our planters consistent in design, our seating consistent in design for all around Polk City. So it included that too.
Yeah, and that's something I've done recently. I've taken inventory of just our picnic tables, the things that a Parks and Rec director gets to do. But no, I mean, we have an opportunity to upgrade some of our picnic tables as well, and to kind of get that consistency of, this is the picnic table that you would see, or these would be the picnic tables and benches, you know. So really it would be used to catch up other parks in a very broad stroke. You know, I couldn't tell you the price of concrete, but, you know, just thinking out loud right now, 12 Oaks Park, finishing that trail that goes through, I think that would be something that would be beneficial. I'd obviously have to get a concrete guy out here to really quote what that would be. I'm not even going to speculate. Truthfully, that's not my area of expertise. But hopefully those are just a few points on the curve for comparison's sake, Amy.
Thanks, I appreciate that. And I should know the answer to this, but I apologize. Steve, we do not have price tags necessarily for anything with community visioning yet, correct? We have concepts and ideas and proposals, but we don't necessarily know how much those things might cost.
Right.
Is that correct?
You're absolutely correct. That's another phase.
Yeah. Well, does anyone, knowing all of that and thinking through from a parks perspective what we would be gaining and or losing, does anyone have any thoughts to start out with? We can do round robin like Rob suggested, or
I mean, I think like keeping everything uniform, like I'm all about cohesiveness as a designer, but I think about the wants of the community on things that people have approached us to, and I haven't had anyone say they wanted matching planters. And so like I get the whole like cohesiveness, but are we there yet to do that, or should we do more on the wish list of the community? And that's kind of what I was thinking. And you know, I'm not specific, but you know, when I do a project in my house, it doesn't bother me too much that I might have a few gold doorknobs, and I really care more about that main room I'm designing. So I don't know if that's like a more of a long thing we want to think about, and then maybe focus more on what the community has asked for. So that was just a thought that came to my head when I heard that.
But back to the part, just so I know, Holly, you'd rather not see the Ivy development go through. You'd rather either see green space or something developed there. I think that as a neighbor and as a commission person.
Of course, yeah, but I'm just thinking as a not neighbor right now, and if that did go through, you know, where would I like to see it go to, you know? But you know, I'll save my opinion for that meeting. I think, you know, I could talk about that a lot, but I don't feel like that this is probably not the right place to talk about the Hy-Vee going in, but more about if it did go in, where'd the money go to?
No, I think it's more about the Hy-Vee or you know, is the $650,000 worth the losing of space? I think there's plenty of time to figure out where that money might go. I mean, and to a certain extent, it is helpful to know what. I mean, Amy's question was good. It's like, okay, well, what does 650, you know, jump us ahead towards? But I think I've got the answer. But like I said, I'm more concerned with the decision.
Okay. I just didn't know if that was like right now or if that was something I needed to wait for the next meeting. But of course, no, like as a neighbor to that space, I am very concerned about traffic. People already go 90 down that road, and it seems like all of Polk City goes down this road now. And, you know, concerned for my son who will play near that road, and then just the noise and the loss of neighborhood feel. Yeah, I mean, the convenience is of course nice of being able to go shop there. But then I also think like, is Fairway enough? Like I never really have noticed a lack of parking spots at Fairway. You know, is Polk City ready for a full Hy-Vee when it's just, you know, a 10-minute drive into Ankeny if you needed to go get that? But I don't know, like I said, as a neighbor to that space, driving into Polk City, when I drive into a town, I guess I like to see parks, and I don't like to see a whole bunch of industrial buildings or, you know, just shopping centers. I think that looks really tacky. I like to kind of push that out of the main roads, and this would be a main road. I mean, that'd be my main criticism, is like Polk City having a park there. It would look really beautiful and welcoming, and also attractive, I think, for people to want to move here. Like if I were driving through Grinnell, my hometown, you know, you got to go past Geldwin and you got to go past Donaldson's and Walmart before you get into the residential streets, and that's just not very welcoming in my opinion.
That's good. Sorry, I should have. I feel like I hijacked this, Jason. Is that all right to focus on this? Are you okay with that? I didn't mean to.
I think you guys should be careful of voting. I was just looking at the agenda. It just says discuss. So I know if each of you want to talk, but just be very cautious of voting. I don't think that is something that we can do in this meeting.
Yeah.
Can I go?
Go ahead.
Okay, so first of all, I apologize for being late. My phone died and then I couldn't get on the meeting because I was tardy. So I apologize for being late. I actually spent some time on this last night doing kind of a mapping of the other areas around us and what they've been zoned for. I also just really thought consciously about like the pros and cons, tried to get past beautification versus, you know, commercial. I tried to think really in depth about what this could mean. And I just like to bring up that even though the sale is $600,000, we have very little industry in our town. And because of that, we miss out on all of those commercial sales tax dollars, but we also miss out on all of those commercial dollars for our schools. So everything that gets sold at Hy-Vee, at this potential Hy-Vee, at Fairway, at Casey's, whatever the case may be, the bottom line is that money goes back to our community. So there is a part of this that we have to be conscious that there is also a long-term benefit to having this Hy-Vee in town. The other thing that I will say about that is currently there are other lands that are for sale that are roughly the same size, like the land that's right by the current sports complex, but that land is listed for considerably more than this land. And so I don't know that I necessarily think that comparing this to the $100,000 price tag or whatever it was previously to the $100,000 that is being offered is unreasonable. The other land that's out there has much, much larger price tags, and that's because this land is going to need some significant movement in order to get the building functioning the way that it needs to build or to be able to function. So I also thought about that because there's going to need to be some boring underneath streets to get to utilities, to get to sewer lines. So they're going to have to put in quite a bit of money. I also wonder what that's going to do to those streets around that area that just were torn up and are just being put back together. The other thing I'll say is that, does anybody know where the Meckleys live? The road that goes from Slater off of 415, you go north and it's a gravel road. It's currently 36th Street. It's right by where there's a new power station. All of that land was purchased and was just recently rezoned as commercial. And I've heard rumblings. I don't know if this is true, but Rob, this might be a good council question to look into, that area is supposed to transform into a retail area. So I'd also be curious if there's going to be other grocery stores and other outlets that are then going to be super close, just around the corner really from us. And I know that there's a Hy-Vee also going into Grimes. So I would also question those things about like the proximity of things. And then the other thought that I had about this is the space is currently not being used at all. I mean, I've seen a couple of people there, you know, throwing a football or something, but it's really unused space. And I question how long that's going to be unused space. I know that there's amazing community visioning plans that are out there. But also my realistic side says, how far out is that? I mean, how long is it till, if we don't have any commercial tax dollars coming into our community, how long is it until we have budgets to do those kinds of things? And then the last thing that I just really want to push for is thinking again, just what others have said about the top priorities list. I know every single one of us on this committee has heard over and over again the need for more recreational facilities, especially for our youth. And so I think that if you would pitch this idea and say, yeah, we're going to sell this, but it's going to be our down payment to start building a new sports complex where parents don't have to dodge each other in order to go to their kid's soccer game. I think you're going to get way bigger buy-in on that. But to say we're going to do it to match picnic tables, or to say we're going to do it to add a single path around a pond, I just can't see people being willing to weigh those two options. And so I think we need to think long and hard about a council, about our recommendation. And if it is a recommendation for it, which I personally have very low stakes in this process because I live a long ways away and I just don't have as much personal interest in it. But if we do recommend it, I think we need to think carefully about what we say we're going to do with the money, because I think that is a big problem with the community right now. A lot of people have mentioned to me that, you know, we used to use that for baseball, put the backstop back up. Great. Can we do that? Those are all the pros and cons that went through my head.
Yeah, and so I appreciate that, and I don't mean to, I'm not going to add to any of the comments. I do want to let them breathe, but I just wanted to clarify that's you know, if this was a city-led proposal, then it would need to be just what you said. But and I don't know if this was before you joined, Ashley, but since we're reacting to the offer, like my approach would, or my concern would be, let's, you know, are people comfortable with the Hy-Vee as a standalone thing? And I don't want to try and convince people with specific, you know, if we were going to do something, I agree with you, it should be audacious. And I don't think Jason was saying would, you know, he was just giving examples of what things cost. So, but again, that's where this is a little bit different. This is us reacting to an offer for land that wasn't for sale, and kind of are the values of Hy-Vee worth, you know, what we would be giving up. But I made a note of everything you said and do appreciate those thoughts. I just wanted to clarify that one piece, and I'm trying to try and not do this every time. I apologize.
I do have one question though that I would love to have answered, and that is, what does the rezoning process look like? I know when a single person tries to rezone land, they have to ask the neighbors to sign in and on to that rezoning. And I'm just curious if that would be a part of the process. And if so, what then ends up happening if all the neighbors say no? Does that matter, or can the council override them?
Right. So Chelsea, keep me honest here, but again, were this to go ahead and just this is a procedural answer to Ashley's question, not a prescriptive sort of this is where it's going to go. But the first step is next Monday's meeting, where we would hypothetically approve a sale. That would then trigger the rezoning process, which takes 3 meetings for 3 readings. They're required to notify all the neighbors within a certain amount of feet. We have to go through all of that discussion. It requires 3 separate approvals for that rezoning. Then you would get into construction plans and specific approvals on the subsequent development of that land. So to your question, yes, there's more of a proactive notification when there's rezoning, but we're not to that point yet because this is still city property. And so a good question, but again, just in the step of the process, that's where it is. Chelsea, Jason, what did I misstate there?
I think you hit it on the head. I think it has to go to P&Z to begin the rezoning process. So you would start with P&Z and then it would go to the council for 3 readings.
And there is notification to all parcels that are within a 250-foot radius anytime there's rezoning. So that gets mailed out minimum of essentially 14 days prior to any action taken. So kind of, Ashley, in addition to your question about do they have to consent, we also as a city have to notify.
Well, I can go. I'll try to be very brief because I have 2 hats. And I did spend a lot of time going through the community improvement plan and breaking all the projects, or looking at how all the projects are broken down. And I identified that there are at least 6 projects in the community improvement plan that we're looking at paying for already through other funding. And those 6 projects are all parks kind of and safety related, the kinds of things that the Park Commission is interested in. Just real quick, the Lost Lakes Playground is already in the plan. The athletic complex is in the plan. The Trailhead Park and the High Trestle Trail connector is in that plan as well. The Quick Star connection, sidewalk or multi-use trail connection to the Neil Smith Trail is in the plan, and so is the connection of that small section between Parker and up Bridge Road toward Fairway in the plan. And then North Broadway sidewalks are also in the community improvement plan. So there's a lot of stuff that's already being talked about of course, and there are, in the plan, it also talks about how the city would go about funding all of those projects already. So the $650,000 to me is an opportunity to do some things that are beyond those things that are already in the plan. I know it was mentioned that having this as park space would be a nice introduction to the community. It was also mentioned the importance of having commercial development and what those dollars can eventually bring to the city, which could lead to more parks opportunities. Community visioning did identify that area and we do have a plan put together for that. Right down the hill, for example, at I think it's Van Dorn, is that the street, right? Yeah, at Van Dorn and South 3rd, Community Envisioning has developed another potential project that would include a trailhead park for bicyclists coming into the downtown area that would have restrooms, which I think a lot of people have seen the need for restrooms in the downtown area, a place to sit, for example. So I just mentioned that because, you know, if 3rd Street was not developed as a park, there is potential to develop a park down the hill from there, sort of kitty corner from the square. So I guess I just I see both sides of it. You know, we put a lot of effort into looking at potential projects through community visioning, but I also see what the city city administration might be looking at too, plus the potential for what city administration is looking at to bring more dollars to parks. I'll just conclude by saying that, again, we are quizzing all the members of community visioning right now to get their ideas, and we plan to provide that information. I don't know how as of yet, whether that's to our city councilors or whether that is at the public hearing. That's yet for the community visioning folks to decide. So some of that might come out in either that information to the council or communication at a public hearing.
Thanks, Steve. Kelly, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
I'll keep it brief, but I would echo a lot of the same thoughts of Ashley as for what it could do to our community. And when we look at, you know, the things we've had on our plan, and that yes, we do have plans for Lost Lakes and these other areas right now, but Lost Lakes has been in the plan for several years already. So just, you know, looking at it as, I think we have a lot more momentum now to get these things done that have been on there. But if this sale goes through, you know, how much faster could we attack a lot of these big things that our community needs? And then, I mean, I would also just be interested in seeing what Hy-Vee's vision for that space is to make that decision. So I don't think it's a make or break for appeal going through our community. I think we still have the square. Everyone loves our square. People who live here, people who don't. As an active sports family, I know on the weekend when we are out of town at a game, that if we need anything, we stop there and we get it, and we might buy for the whole week. So that is just out of convenience that, you know, we're near there, we need something. If we had something in our community open on Sunday, you know, then our dollars are staying here more. And with everyone coming into our community, they may be doing the same. So just kind of going off the benefits for our community, I think it is definitely worth listening to.
Thanks, Kelly. And I don't have a lot to add. I would echo a lot of Kelly's thoughts that she just shared, that there's a lot of things to navigate, and if you can look at it and fix and feel like it can fit in that neighborhood and the traffic flow works and all of those things from really the city, the opportunities it provides to Parks and Rec, I think we get more opportunities from the money from that sale than maybe the use of that property as it is now, or it might be in the next few years. But there's a lot to navigate that I feel like you have a very thorough list of things to work through, Rob. So you can work on finding out if you have answers to those other things first. Anything else on this agenda item before we move on? All right, well, thank you, everyone. That was helpful. So next on the list is reviewing Parks and Commission roles and responsibilities. Does this kick back to you, Jason, again?
No, Chelsea's going to speak to this.
All right, great. Thanks, Chelsea.
Thank you. I made a PowerPoint, and Jenny, can you tell me how do I share that?
There is a setting on the bottom of your toolbar that should give you the ability to share screen.
Nope, that's not it. I do not see it.
It should be like right in the middle. So participants chat and it should say share screen.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
It just takes a minute to load.
Okay. Can you guys see that? Okay.
Yes.
I kind of called this orientation. I just wanted to get some very basic information out to the commission tonight. I appreciate you guys allowing me to be on your call. My plan is to do something similar to all of the city's boards and commissions for just a reminder and kind of an update on general operating practices. So I will not keep you all a lot of time, but I just want to go over a couple of things really quickly with the commission. So I want to start out by saying, what is the Polk City Parks Commission? I took some time to go through the actual ordinance establishing a Parks Commission, and I took a look at some of the city's policies and procedures related to boards and commissions, and a lot of the information I'm going to provide you with tonight comes from a combination of that and then some very basic Iowa code things intermingled as well. But the Parks Commission is an advisory body that makes recommendations to the City Council for approval. So by Iowa code, cities in Iowa can have boards or they can have commissions. So the difference between the two is boards have final authority or final say, and commissions are recommending bodies. So we have several commissions with the city of Polk City, but we have the Parks Commission, the Planning and Zoning Commission, we have a Historic Preservation Commission, and they all make recommendations to the City Council. We also have a library board and a board of adjustment, and the decisions that those boards make are final. So that is the main difference between the boards and commissions. So all of our city appointed boards and commissions are appointed by the mayor and approved by the City Council. The Parks Commission is a 7-member commission with staggered 5-year terms. I don't know if any of you know that you signed up for a 5-year term. I know that some of you are fulfilling an existing term. But each member is serving some sort of 5-year term if it's a new term or a remainder of a term. So in order for this commission to conduct business, you have to have what we call as a quorum, and that's enough people to call the meeting to order, which is 4 people. So per the ordinance, each year, the members of this commission are supposed to appoint 1 chairperson and 1 secretary. So I know that the Parks Commission's been really good about a chairperson, but I would challenge you guys to fulfill that secretary requirement. We're happy to try to navigate through COVID the best as we can, and I recognize that it definitely helps to have staff members, but something for the commission to think about is we do probably need to appoint a secretary to the board, and then the secretary would be responsible for the minutes taken at the meeting. And then since the Parks Commission is an arm of the city, we are subject to Iowa open meeting laws, and just some of the basic information related to Iowa open meeting laws are that anytime you want to call a meeting to order, we have to post an agenda 24 hours or more in advance. Once we get below that 24-hour notification period, it becomes very difficult to hold a meeting unless it's deemed an emergency situation. So the notice of the meeting by Iowa law actually just has to go at the place of the meeting. So most of the time our meetings take place at City Hall. Our only requirement to post notice of that meeting is actually at City Hall. And then I like to just kind of give a little reminder to all of the commission members that any communication that you guys have back and forth with one another is also subject to those Iowa open meeting laws. I get hesitant, you know, when we send out an email and the group responds back and we start getting into this conversation, because there have been other cities in the state of Iowa that have actually been in violation of the open meeting laws by doing that. So just kind of think things through when you guys are talking amongst each other, to make sure that we're actually not fulfilling the requirements of the open meeting laws. And then the only other thing I wanted to touch base on under the Parks and what is the Parks Commission is your duty to vote. So when you're appointed to a board and commission anywhere, really, you have a requirement to vote on everything that is presented in front of you for a meeting. So there are 3 votes that you can cast on any topic: yes, no, and abstain. So the one thing that I will mention is, for an abstention, you have to have a true conflict of interest. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of examples of what a conflict of interest would be. If one of the city council members' wives wanted to apply for a position with the city and we ended up hiring her, a city council member would have to abstain from any sort of pay increases, setting pay for that position, etc. That would be considered a true conflict of interest, because that city council member could benefit financially from his wife being a city employee. Another good example I would give is maybe one of your grown children has a business and you would be looking to give that person business, and they could compensate well. Maybe it's a mowing business. I'll just give that as an example. But if that were to come before the Parks and Rec Commission for someone to do mowing on behalf of the city parks, and that was your child, you would need to abstain from voting. So unless you have a true conflict of interest, you are required to vote. Iowa code actually states that if you abstain from voting and don't have a true conflict of interest, that your vote would be tallied with the no votes. So I hope I spent enough time on that, but just wanted to real briefly discuss that. I know that's something that we've gotten a lot of questions about in the past, so I will move on. Parks Commission key players. So I just wanted to kind of go over what everybody's role is. The chairperson facilitates action during the meeting and runs the meeting. So the secretary takes minutes of the meeting and presents those minutes to the commission for approval at the following meeting. Since this commission meets monthly, you actually have to wait the following month to have your minutes approved by the rest of the commission members, but that would be the role of the secretary. Parks and Recreation Director, which is a new position for us here in Polk City, but you guys need to utilize the Parks and Recreation Director. That is your expert resource for all parks and recreation activities, so definitely utilize that resource. and additional city staff that might be required depending on the subject matter. Maybe it's public works, maybe it's the city manager, city clerk. Rely on your staff people. If you ever have a question about anything, feel free to reach out to any of us and we'll definitely try to get you a good solid answer. So then I put on here also council liaison. So the city council does designate a council liaison every year. Rob is currently your liaison member, and that will change in January. You'll have a new liaison, but the liaison is a member of the city council. They come to the meetings. They're not necessarily participating, but they're there to ensure fluent communication between the commission and the city council. So that council member brings you information of things that are happening at the city council level, and then vice versa. He goes to the city council and explains kind of some of the things that the commission is doing and talking about. So Parks Commission operating procedures. So this is something that I'd really like to challenge the commission to do. Since you guys are a commission, you can establish your own rules and procedures for operations. Sure, we would like some of those rules and procedures to somewhat mirror what the city council has established for themselves, but make them unique to your commission. Know that we could put together some good solid operating rules and procedures for you, and then it would have to go to the council for approval. But we're kind of working on this for all of our boards and commissions, is to adopt a similar policy. So in January of this year, the council approved a city council policies and procedures. Just real briefly, some of those things that are covered in that policy document are: when are the meetings and how do we call special meetings to order? Voting, how each measure is voted on. Is it a voice, a roll call vote, or an all in favor of? How items are placed on the agenda. That is actually outlined in the city council procedure policy as well. I love to give this as an example. I'll give a real extreme example, but let's say that Rob calls me up one day and says, hey, I want you to put on next Monday's council agenda to sell City Hall. Let's just say that happened. And I think part of the problem, one, is I don't know how the other council members feel about talking about that topic in general. And two, the boards and commissions operate as a whole and not one individual. So without a public meeting taking place and all of you being present, it really leaves staff a little bit unsure of how the other elected officials, appointed officials feel about talking about a certain topic. So I will tell you how the council operates is if a council member has an idea, we share it at a council meeting, kind of at the end of reports and particulars, and the council discusses if they would like to see it on a future agenda, and usually it is a yes. So I would kind of tell you guys like something similar would probably suffice for the Parks Commission, and it makes it a little bit easier for Jason as well, because I know that he is constantly trying to come up with things for meetings as far as topics go and discussion items. So I do know that it would significantly help him if you guys brought ideas for discussion at future meetings. A couple of other things that policy covers that I think that the commission should also include in their policy: interacting with members of the public at a public meeting. How are you going to interact with the public? And order of the meeting. Do you want to have, consent agenda, new business, adjournment? More than likely you're going to go in some similar order, but that could all be outlined in your policy and procedures. Okay, so I really dug into the Parks Commission ordinance, and I do think that we're looking to make some changes with our city code in general, and I would really like to review this ordinance and maybe make a few changes to some things. But as it stands now, this commission meets regularly to ensure up-to-date information is being shared. I am a big advocate in meeting repeatedly. I think that it helps, and it helps the brainstorming process and getting things accomplished. Some other things the Park Commission does: you guys assist in program planning, you assist in parkland planning, volunteers at Parks and Recreation Department functions. You guys review donations of park property and recommends to the City Council approval or disapproval of park property. Makes rules and regulations for the governance of city parks and persons utilizing the parks. Just a few examples of things that you guys do. You can change hours of operation for the city parks facilities. That is subject to council approval. You could discuss alcohol use in the public parks if that's something that you guys wish to talk about at a future meeting. It would be subject to council approval. And then also fees associated with the use of any city parks. That would be something that would start at this Parks Commission and then would go to the City Council for approval and review. Have I lost anybody yet? I'm trying to wrap this up. Okay, so I wanted to kind of do just an overview of what does the Parks and Recreation Director do. So there's some overlap here, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But Parks and Rec Director plans for and sees through the day-to-day operations of the department. You all aren't there or around on a day-to-day basis. So that's why we hire a staff person to run the day-to-day operations for the department. So Jason reviews and approves special events. I know this is something that the commission has done in the past. It makes it a little bit tricky when we get event applications in a week before the event takes place. So our staff has actually started signing off on all special events. And that's something that the director is capable of doing. That's not to say that he won't let you guys know what has or hasn't been approved, but just so you know, we are signing off on all of those internally as a staff. Researches and makes recommendations to the Park Commission on various agenda items. So like I mentioned, your Parks and Rec Director is your expert in all things Parks and Recreation. So, you know, if there's something that you would like him to look into and research, he's happy to do it. And I think this kind of ties into that brainstorming that I talked about a little bit ago. Program planning and parkland planning. So like I said, there's some overlap here. I see the director and the commission working really well on making sure that we get better at this. Reviews donation of park property, such as benches, trees, picnic tables, etc. So I think that if we could come up with some sort of monetary amount, I talk about the commission reviewing park dedication. Some of these smaller things are the director's responsibility. And then once you get into big things, maybe it's park property, maybe it's playground equipment. That's definitely something that needs to be run through the commission. Parks Director also submits an annual operating budget to the city manager, supervises all Parks and Recreation employees, and stays up to date with current activities and trends in Parks and Recreation. So kind of like I explained to you guys how the three entities work together. So you've got your Parks and Recreation Director. He comes to you with research and ideas, and he is your best tool that you can utilize to get some of your projects done. He brings them to the Parks and Recreation Commission. The Parks Commission makes a recommendation to the City Council. And then really quickly, we just approved this a couple of months ago, but this is the City of Polk City's organizational chart. And you can kind of see the various departments that the city has. And you can see that the boards and commissions, like I mentioned, are appointed by the mayor and approved by the City Council. So you guys do fall in there. Parks and Rec Director supervises all of the city staff in the Parks and Rec Department. And that's kind of just our basic organizational chart. Okay, so connecting with the public. Elected and appointed officials must interact with the public. I'm sure all of you have been hit up somewhere by a member of the public that had questions, wanted to give you some feedback. My suggestion is always to listen and to respond with facts. And if you don't have those facts, one, get the facts or put them in contact with a staff member. If you ever need help, this is what we are here for. I am happy to respond to anybody that wants to ask any question, regardless of what it is. Maybe it's a rumor they heard. This is what the city staff is here for. They're a resource for the commission. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there, that always listen to the public and get them some factual information. Invite the public to attend a public meeting if they have an idea. You know, we get a lot of people, you guys are in the really fun department. We get a lot of people that have fun ideas for parks, facilities, and maybe you invite those people to come to your meetings if they just have a special idea that they want to be taken into consideration. Furthermore, encourage them to volunteer. I can't say that we have enough volunteers for anything we do in government, but good, solid volunteers are hard to come by. So I would always encourage people to volunteer if they're looking to be involved. We have various other boards and commissions that we are always taking applications for. So I would just encourage you guys to extend that arm out to people. So just a few resources. If any of you want to learn more about Parks and Recreation, one, I'd encourage you to probably meet with Jason. It's been a little bit unusual since he started, but that would be a great first step for any of you. National Recreation and Parks Association, Iowa Parks and Rec Association. I'll let Jason kind of just touch base on the information those providers have. But the Iowa League of Cities, they have a lot of free information on their website. And no, it's not specific to just Parks and Recreation, but the Iowa League of Cities is a very good avenue if you're looking for any information related to cities. So I'd encourage you all to utilize that one. And Jason, if you want to talk about the Parks Associations, I'll let you touch on those quickly.
Sure. So NRPA is the national association, and that's really a resource for anybody in the Parks and Rec field. You know, it's anything from, you know, program planning to the special events that your community does that, you know, could be beneficial to yours. It's facility design. It's how to get people to volunteer. It's everything and anything in between. And it's on a national scope. So you can really get inspired by what other states are doing. You know, I don't have to tell you guys that sometimes Iowa is behind on trends. So it's always interesting to see what, you know, the West Coast or the mountains are doing. And then the Iowa Parks and Recreation Association, that's just NRPA, but dialed down within the confines of our state. So sometimes when you're looking for comparable projects, you know, with cities of similar scope, you know, that's the place to look for that. But like I said, just good reading if you're ever interested in, you know, what other cities are doing with 57 acres, you know, or to look at other master plans of what can fit in 57 acres. It's a great resource and it's pretty inspiring.
So I will leave my discussion off with any questions that the commission has. I'd be happy to answer anything that might have come up. And I hope that maybe we touched base on something tonight that you didn't know about.
Will this be shared with us too, this PowerPoint?
Yes, I can have Jason send it out to you.
Okay, yeah, that would be great.
Well, as the newest member of the Parks Commission, I appreciated receiving all this information.
Right, I think all of us do. So thank you for doing that, Chelsea. I would be interested in seeing the city council's policy and procedures. I'm sure they're probably online, but if you're sending out an email, Jason, could you just point me to the fastest way to find those? I would be willing to take on reviewing those for us and starting to think through how to put some of our own together.
Yeah, no problem. Be happy to.
Thank you. All right, any other questions on what we all should be doing? Not right now, okay. Next is reports in particulars. So to give Jason and Chelsea a break, is there anything else from the council?
Yeah, I will be brief because I've talked too much as outlined by the procedures here. But sorry, I do get, this was super helpful tonight. I feel a little bit spoiled from some of my colleagues to get that feedback. So hopefully I've not breached protocol too much in diving into that property, but really do appreciate your feedback. So the one thing that I did want to bring up, so I actually had brought up in the August meeting the work session idea. I apologize. I hadn't yet watched the August meeting in our September meeting, so that's why I'm a month late here on this. But I love that idea. I think some of the other things that we've talked through, I'm not sure what the timing is. I've actually pushed both to have a work session with council and P&Z as well as Parks Commission. So I think there's a time and place to do that, and it may be after we get some of the information back from the Parks Master Plan. I don't know, but I think well, so if we get that, we get the full benefit of community visioning done, and I think this may go to, I don't know if we lost Josh or not, but he had mentioned this a few months ago. How does that fit into what happens here? And I think Chelsea did a good job of answering some of those questions too. But I do think a joint session with council and you guys would be good. You know, maybe early next year. You know, preferably if you know, in person. I just think the discussions go a little bit better that way too. So I want to bring that up again. I apologize for being a month late on that, but I think that does provide benefit. I probably am missing something else, but obviously the headline has on the issue here has kind of garnered most of the attention. So if you guys got any questions, otherwise I can shut up finally.
All right. Anything else from staff tonight?
Yeah, Amy, I've got a few things. From the world of public works, they are out at the sports complex doing some maintenance on the baseball, softball fields. So this week they'll be aerating and overseeding, getting ready for the off season. So they'll come back just as good next year. The Polk City, we were gifted 12 trees from the Earl May and Grimes. So this week, hopefully I will get a chance to get out with Ken Morse, the tree guy, and we'll find the best place for those trees to be planted yet this fall. And something that came across my desk today, MWA, Metro Waste Authority, who we now do trash through, they have a grant opportunity with all of the communities that utilize MWA. They have a pot of 700 trees that they would like to divvy up between their communities in response to the derecho damage. So I have reached out to them, and I'm going to try to get us some more trees here in Polk City, since we know we lost a good amount back on August 10th. And the last thing I have is our commission, your fellow commission member Stephanie Campbell, citing professional schedules and family commitments, notified me of her intent to resign her position on the Parks Commission. So that needs council approval, and I will make sure something's in their packet for next week so they can accept her resignation. And then after that, we will we'll move forward with the appropriate process of filling that position. And thank you all
all of
for,
that, Jason.
thank you all. This was a long meeting, but I think it was great. But thank you all.
Yeah. All right, is there anything else from the commission tonight?
So I just wanted to make one comment. I know that at one of our previous meetings when Jason first brought up the idea of doing something with that broken tree on the corner of the downtown park, that we talked about as the Parks Commission the importance of Jason taking a lead role in that and getting input on that. And it looks like he did, and I congratulate him for that, and I'm excited to see that project develop.
Thank you, Steve.
I keep forgetting I'm
Right.
muted. I am too really excited for that just because, you know, it just feels like a long time that we've gotten to do anything yet this year with a park. So it feels really refreshing to see something done, and this year. So I'm really looking forward to seeing it.
And I'll add, it's just exciting to see everything click more and more with Jason here, and Chelsea, thank you for coming and doing the presentation, and just all of the pieces coming together. So that's been really helpful for all of us on the commission too. Thank you all for helping us navigate all of that and getting it all working more smoothly. We appreciate it. If there's nothing else, then could I get a motion to adjourn until November 2nd?
I move to approve to adjourn till November 2nd.
I second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right. Thanks for hanging in there, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Settle down.